Welcome, dear learners. My name is Suraj Mashilkar, Assistant Professor, AISSMS College of Hotel Management. I hope you're doing well. Today, we are going to go through with the session of wine faults. Before we move to the session, please do watch the previous video of wine manufacturing from my channel. There are two different videos. One, manufacturing of steel wine part 1 and manufacturing of steel wine part 2. Link for the same is shared in the description below. Let's go through today's session. Before we move to the main session, let's see the objectives of the session. The objectives are to understand the meaning of wine faults, to understand how to detect the wine fault, to list various wine faults, and to understand the various wine faults in depth. Let's start with the first point, which is wine faults and introduction. What exactly wine faults are? A wine fault or a defect is an unpleasant characteristic of a wine, often resulting from poor winemaking practices or storage conditions and leading to wine spoilage. There are many causes for the perception in wine faults, including poor hygiene at the winery, excessive or insufficient exposure of the wine to oxygen, excessive or insufficient exposure of wine to sulphur, overextended maceration of the wine, either pre or post fermentation, faulty fining, filtering and stabilization of the wine, the use of dirty oak barrels, overextended barrel aging, and the use of poor quality cork. Outside of the winery, other factors within the control of the retailer or end user of the wine can contribute to the perception of flaws in the wine. Many of the components that cause wine faults are already naturally present in the wine, but at insufficient concentration to be of issue. Sometimes the faults are very obvious with symptoms like terrible taste, awful looks, and worse smell. The care has to be taken to prevent the wine from spoiling. There are different ways of detecting wine faults. The vast majority of wine faults are detected by the nose and the distinctive aromas that they give off. However, the presence of some wine faults can be detected by visual and taste perception. For example, premature oxidation can be noticed by yellowing and browning of the wine color. The sign of gas bubbles in wines that are not meant to be sparkling can be a sign of re-fermentation or malolactic fermentation happening in the bottle. Unusual breaks in the color of the wine could be a sign of excessive copper, iron, or protein that were not removed during fining or filtering. A wine with an unusual color for its variety or wine region could be a sign of excessive or insufficient maceration, as well as poor temperature control during fermentation. Tactile clues of potential wine faults includes the burning, acidic taste associated with volatile acidity that make a wine seems out of balance. These are certain ways of identifying how a wine fault is. These wine faults can be detected either by visually or through aroma or through taste. Let's see the various wine faults in the wines. Following are the wine faults listed. The first one is cork to wine. Second is oxidation of wine. Third is excess use of sulphur. Fourth is motherization. Fifth is tartar flakes. Sixth is formation of crystals. Seventh is cloudiness. Eighth is secondary fermentation. Ninth is foreign materials and sediments. 10th is whipping cork. Let's go ahead with these 10 particular wine faults in brief. Let's begin with the first, corked wine. Common wine fault is for wine to be corked, which means it has been contaminated with cork tint. Cork tint occurs when corks are contaminated with TCA, a chemical compound which is formed when certain fungi in the cork reacts with a specific type of chloride used to clean the cork. TCA stands for trichloroanisole. This is how a corked wine can be identified. Let's see the next fault, which is oxidation of wine. The oxidation of wine is perhaps the most common of wine faults, as the presence of oxygen and a catalyst are the only requirement for the occurrence of the same. Oxidation can occur throughout the wine-making process and even after the wine has been bottled. That leads to a loss of color, flavor, and aroma, which is sometimes referred as flattening of wine. This is an example of oxidation in alcohol. Similar way, oxidation in wine is also harmful. Let's see the next wine fault, which is excess sulfur. Sulfur is used as an additive throughout the wine-making process, primarily to stop oxidation, as mentioned above, but also as antimicrobial agent. When managed properly in wines, its presence there is often undetected. With excess of sulfur, following other issues identified in a wine. When excess sulfur dioxide is used, wine reminiscent of matchsticks, burnt rubber, or mothballs. And if excess of hydrogen sulfide is used, it imparts a distinct rotten egg aroma to the wine. Let's see the next wine fault. Next wine fault is motherization. This motherization is closely associated to one of the wine which is called as cooked wine named Madeira. Let's see what is motherization. The ideal storage temperature of wine is generally accepted to 13 degrees Celsius. When wines that are stored at temperature greatly higher than this will experience an increased aging rate, which will result in unwanted cooking of the wine. This may result in motherization of wine. Heat-damaged wine often become oxidized and red wines may take on a brick color. If received bottle is cold, but when opened, if you get stewed fruit, pruny smell, then you know the wine has become motherized. Motherized wine or motherization of wine is also termed as heat-damaged wines or overcooked wines. Let's have a look at the next wine fault, which is tartar flakes and formation of crystals. Tartar crystals are bits of potassium bitartrate or calcium bitartrate that have fallen out of solutions in the wine. They're more common in white wine and usually happen when wine has become refrigerated for a longer time. Potassium and tartaric acids are two natural components of grape juice. To avoid this crystal formation or tartar flakes formation, cold stabilization is often done in white wines to remove any excessive potassium bitartrate, which is a natural substance found on the grapes, also known as cream of tartar. The next wine fault is cloudiness. Cloudiness usually indicates the growth of yeast or bacteria. This may be caused by bad winemaking extremes in storage temperature, excess protein, contact with metal or bacterial actions, or an unwanted continuation of fermentation. It is likely the wine will be unpleasant, although harmless to drink. There's an image which shows what a cloudiness in wine is. The wine in the glass on the right is the clear, clean wine, whereas the wine which is on the left is an example of cloudiness of wine. The next wine fault is secondary fermentation, sometimes also known as re-fermentation. It's caused by yeast re-fermenting the residual sugar present within bottled wine. It occurs when sweet wines are bottled in non-sterile conditions, allowing the presence of microorganisms. The main issue associated with the wine includes turbidity from yeast biomass production, excess ethanol production may violate labeling laws, slight carbonation, and some coarse odors. This is one of the common fault in wines to have some foreign material or sediment present. The fault is caused due to improper winemaking methods or carelessness during the bottling procedures. It is a fault that can be solved by a process called decanting. This is one of the faults which is readily observed in wines which are old wines, the wines which are kept for a longer period of aging, untouched and moved. The lees particles which were not filtered during the filtration process, the minutest particles, start coagulating and forming into a larger sediments which are undesirable to be served. There's an example of sediments that are present in wine. These sediments may not be desirable to be served in a glass. Hence, before serving the wine which is having foreign material and sediments may be decanted prior hand. Let's have a look at the next wine fault. Next wine fault is whipping cork. This is nothing but seeping of the wine from the cork can be caused by a too small or faulty cork on when a secondary fermentation pushes the cork loose. A couple of drops of wine leaking could be the sign of a faulty cork or a clue that the wine had been exposed to high temperature, causing the wine to press past the cork. In either scenarios, the wine might be totally fine. It might be unpleasant or it could be somewhere in between. This sometimes may result in unnecessary drying of cork and breaking it eventually while opening. An example of how a cork can break while opening. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe the channel. Also attempt the small quiz related to the topic through the link provided in the description of the video. References, data credits, and photo credits. Thank you.